Since 2007, one man has dared to expose the sinister power players on all sides of the phony political spectrum. Armed with over 30 years of research knowledge of the paranormal, government conspiracies, geopolitics, secret and ancient societies, the esoteric arts, and much more. One man's quest for knowledge has become a mission for the enlightenment of all people. Broadcasting from the conspiracy ground zero of Dallas, Texas, this is The Global Reality with your host, Josh Reeves.
All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the broadcast. I'm your host, Josh Reeves. It is Wednesday, October 30th, 2019. Back with you again for another show. Going to be getting into news and various type things, as we always do here on the broadcast for you. So strap in, get ready, and welcome back for another edition. I'm feeling better today. Thanks to everybody out there who sent their concerns, and much appreciated, especially after the stuff I've just gotten over in the past month, man. It's been terrible. I think it was just what I thought it was yesterday. I think it was just like a change in the weather type thing, because it's gone from being rather warm, still at least warm enough to still run the air conditioner too. And we're getting our first freeze of the year tonight. It's going to be like lower 30s tonight. So, and we went from that within the span of like 48 hours. So sometimes when the weather changes, sometimes we'll get sick and stuff like that. This was just weird because I never felt anything like this, but, no, I didn't have any fluid in my lungs. I wasn't coughing. I didn't have phlegm. It wasn't even normal stuff. It was just, my lungs just didn't feel good. But then again, I do live in the city, and we do have these ozone alert action days and stuff. It may have been one of those. I don't pay attention to it every day, but it may have been one of those yesterday. Most of the time those are generally during the summertime, but I think they do happen not in the summertime as well. But I took a bunch of anti-inflammatories and feeling better today, so we'll see what happens. Not a big bunch of news today, but I've still got a bunch of stuff left over from previous days, so we'll get into all that for you here tonight. Again, don't forget, this is our fundraising week for the broadcast for the network, where we have to reach our operating cost goal to cover all the expenses and everything it costs to keep this thing up and running every month, the cost of the studio, all the bills, everything. So please be sure to go and contribute so we can reach 100% of our goal. We need to reach 100% of our goal this week in order to be able to continue. I'm getting closer to having Spellcasters 2 finished. I'm eyeing a release date of somewhere around the 3rd or the 4th, maybe a couple of days after that, depending on how long it takes for everything to finalize. I'm going to have to, once everything's finished, I'm going to have to do finalization stuff, where I have to make the files, make sure the files, test them on different screens, all that good stuff, and make sure everything is legit. So that might take an additional couple of days. So we may be 5th or 6th, somewhere around there, but I'm still looking to stay on target to have this thing out sometime in the next 5-6 days. And again, all that's just going to be dependent on everybody pulling together and everybody coming together and chipping in and helping us reach 100% of our operating cost goal this week. So let's not wait till the last minute. Let's get some movement in here and get a good chunk of this taken out before we get down to crunch time, red alert time again. All right. We are doing the questions for contributions again. I don't know if I mentioned that this week, but everybody contributes $100 or more. You are entitled to submit a question for me to answer here on the show. So If you contribute $100 or more, just email me your questions, gorealityshow@gmail.com, and I will answer them for you here on the broadcast this week. That's always fun. So we'll do that again for everybody here this week. Let's see. Where do I want to start with the news? This is an interesting one because I've talked about this for many years. I talked about it a lot for a long time, so I haven't actually kind of touched on this in a while, but I saw this story and was like, you know what? This would be a good time, considering all the saber rattling that we constantly hear for Iran and always seems to increase when there's Republicans in office. But I've talked about for many years that if you look at any of these, and this even goes back to even prior before 9/11 and everything, and even goes back even to the first Iraq war. But one of the things that's been very predominant and didn't really start becoming prominent until like the late 80s, early 90s has been any of these countries around the world where we're told they're a threat, and they're a threat to democracy, and you hear the most saber rattling. One of the things I've discovered about 10 years ago in my research was that these places all seem to have artifacts, archaeological sites that go back and pertain to these certain periods of time, specifically the post-flood civilizations that popped up, and specifically in that area of the Middle East. I've talked extensively through the years about the Behistun inscription that's in Iran. I've talked about a lot of the other different artifacts. But that's one of the main things, they've gotten. That's why, in this, again, this is something that transcends even political party lines of left and right and who's in there. Of course, as I said before, obviously it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that every time there's Republicans in office, when we see the most saber rattling for Iran. But even when you had Obama in office, the big target during the Obama administration was Yemen, because Yemen is chock full of these archaeological things. And what's interesting about Yemen is that the people there around these ancient sites have been trained generationally for thousands of years, ladies and gentlemen, to protect that area. There's all those reports coming out after 9/11 about, Yemen and they used children. They trained children as terrorists in Yemen, and all these news reports about, AK-47s with Smurf stickers on them. They kind of make them kid-like and put stickers and that. All that was bullshit. Not bullshit in that isn't going on, but bullshit in the fact that they leave out the real reason why it's happening and instead say these are children being trained to be terrorists and murderers and all the rest of this stuff, when it's a tribal thing where these people indigenous people have been passed down for thousands of years to protect what's in that area. Supposedly the Palace of Sheba is there in Yemen, and some people believe the Ark of the Covenant may be there. And Iran is another one. Iran is another one that's full of these ancient sites. We know that, people know stuff about like the ziggurat at Ur and a lot of these different, what are essentially pyramids. They call them ziggurats. Essentially, they're pyramids that are found littered across ancient Iraq. And many of these sites were blown up and destroyed intentionally during the various conflicts over there in Iraq. We've seen much more under ISIS, where ISIS is being blamed for these things. And really, if you really want to get down to it, the number one country in the world, I can't tell you, there's been so many that come out this year, I hadn't even been able to cover them all here on the show. You've probably seen some of them in the news, and you probably wonder, I wonder why Josh didn't talk about that. Well, there's been so many, I hadn't been able to do it. Israel, they are digging. I wish I could get some people like what they got going on in Israel to have that kind of zeal over here with me for the rock wall. Geez, they're just digging up goddamn everything over there. And believe it or not, they're finding lots of stuff too. And this is not an accident. This is not something where, all of a sudden, well, actually, no, it is something where all of a sudden they've decided to do it. There didn't seem to be much interest in this for many years. But of course, that's what, like I talk about in Spellcasters 1, when I focus in on 1947 and the importance of 1947 in that year. And it didn't even dawn on me for a long time until you sit down and you look at it, and you start seeing 47 pop up all the time. And then you see everything that occurred in 1947, including the creation of the phony state of Israel by the Rothschilds and all that. You all know about that. But what I'm saying is that was part of the deal. They may have claimed it was for, to have the Jewish homeland for the people. Bullshit. These people want to control history and they want to control the past. And now it's come out that they're finding in Iran, or probably have, they've known about these for years. Let me rephrase that. They actually discovered a lot of these in Iran many years ago. Really right around the time when they were going gung-ho in Iraq after 9/11 to go and steal all the antiquities and claim all the ancient sites there. And right around that time, they started discovering in Iran ziggurats, pyramid structures, that were actually older than the ones in Iraq, ladies and gentlemen, older than the ziggurat at Ur, okay? And they have found some that they believe there are probably the oldest in the world. We're talking about probably even older than the Great Pyramids. Buried beneath the sand, the ziggurat of Giraffe may be the largest and oldest of its kind in the world. The ziggurat of Giraffe, known also as the Konar Sandal Ziggurat, is an ancient monument located in Giraffe in the southern Iranian province of Kerman, a place that some say is Iran's cradle of civilization. Yep, there it is. See, I was right. The ziggurat was discovered in 2002, and it's been reported that it is the second ziggurat to be found in Iran, the first being the Chogazambi ziggurat. Well, from what I understand, there's at least 15 there. Maybe they're only admitting to finding 2. I've heard that there's as many as 15. Probably a lot of these are being kept under wraps. Same thing as in Yemen. You've got some, even though, listen, the people it's just like the Native American thing here. Okay? It's just like the Native American thing here in the United States. The people who actually built these structures in Iran predate the current people who are basically transplants that live there now. But a lot of these people believe that's their heritage because they're born in Iran. It's just like people here born, but they're born in America. They see these ancient things in America as their heritage, even though they didn't originally come from here. And, this is why, Native Americans believe because they've been told to believe, even though in the time of Thomas Jefferson, there was, it used to be a scientifically held fact that, and this is no joke, this was a scientifically held belief for many years, and I believe we know why they changed it, but there was 2 groups of pre-colonization Americans, ancient Americans, that were listed in the historical record and science records back in the day in the time of Thomas Jefferson, and he had a lot to do with getting all that changed and whatnot. And that's why they went from saying that the Native Americans were, to justify their genocide, they were labeled as being savage people with nothing worth preserving, who were basically primitive. And then once we started getting in there and investigating these ancient sites across America, the ancient mound sites and everything, they started realizing, oh shit, we got a problem here. So that's when, after they, pretty much already committed the genocide and all that, they changed the tune, they changed the historical record, they got rid of who they called the mound builders. That was what they called them. They got rid of that, did away with that altogether, and then assigned responsibility for the creation of those sites to Native Americans, and then as reparations designated these, different reservations and the associated that. So now you have Native Americans who believe that these ancient sites, these ancient mountains across America were built by their ancestors, when in reality they were built by the people who seeded their ancestors. So you've got the same kind of thing going on now in Iran, because the people that inhabit Iran now are not the native, Iran Aryan people that originally inhabited that land. According to some sources, the ziggurat of Jiroft is the largest and oldest structure of its kind in the world. The word ziggurat may be translated as temple tower, and is a structure consisting of several levels, the topmost of which was probably a high temple. And interesting about that is that the mounds were constructed the same way. What you don't see often in these recreations of them, or the stuff where they created parks, so we can go see them now across the country. Probably the only one I ever saw that really had something that was similar to what you would see was at Moundville in Alabama. They had one of the mounds that had a building structure on top of it. But that's what oftentimes they would have. These structures on top of the mounds, and there would be a big chief. That's where the term big chief came from. Remember when you were a little kid? Remember when you were in kindergarten or first grade and you had the big chief tablet? And you always hear about the Indian big. That's where the term big chief came from. Because oftentimes these guys that were the big chief of these tribes and early indigenous populations in the United States, way, way prior to any sort of European colonization, even there are reports of this from the Lewis and Clark expedition. What's that city in Alabama? Tuscaloosa. Supposedly the name Tuscaloosa came from what's the name of one of these big chiefs. And Lewis and Clark came across one of these guys. It was either in northern Florida or in Alabama. I can't remember, somewhere around there, maybe around the coast. And they encountered, when they came to a large mound, and there were some, regular people around the bottom, but they took them to see the chief, and they described as the big chief, and it was a giant. It was a giant Indian man sitting in the lotus position on top of a mound with the feather and the headband, and his name was Tuscaloosa. And he was a big chief because he was a giant. And then once the rest of the giants finally died off, and you had the regular sized people, those are the ones that carried on the traditions of Native Americans. And this is why you had, and these people didn't even have written languages. I mean, the advancements in the knowledge of rituals and all this stuff came from these earlier giants that were the big chiefs. It's fascinating stuff. The ziggurats are most commonly associated with the Mesopotamian civilization, which today roughly corresponds to most of Iraq plus Kuwait and the eastern parts of Syria. Nevertheless, some of these monumental structures have also been found in the western part of Iran. Some of the ways of distinguishing between Mesopotamian and Iranian ziggurats is the way these buildings were accessed. Well, right, and I get that, and I get why they have to say that, and most people are just repeating, the established historical narratives on this. But again, this is part of the mind control. This is part of the historical whitewashing, where they want to put up borders, and they want you to have borders in your mind when you think about these sites and borders that did not exist at the time. So they count on you going, well, you know, Iraq's over here and Iran's over here. Obviously, these are two different types of people that built these. They want to do that when in reality, really, it was one group that traced all, it's all the way back to Babylon, that were world traveling, that built a lot of these. But you'll see time and again, they want you, and they do that here with the American stuff. That was one of the biggest things finding in my treks across, across this whole fucking country, shooting stuff for Lost Secrets of Ancient America, was after going to these sites and then, you know, doing stuff on the maps and looking at it. I mean, then you start to realize, wait a second, we're, you know, because of our modern day thinking about borders and all this stuff and what we think we know about, you know, travel, and it would have taken, you know, by horseback or by foot, it would have taken all these years to go, you know. So people, you know, they build these things, these blockages up in their mind where, you know, it becomes easy for them to believe that something like, you know, the rock wall here in Texas, well, there's no way that would have anything to do with ancient sites that are found in, say, Ohio, the Ohio Valley. That's too far, right? So, but that's what they count on you thinking about everything in terms of what you know. You don't know if these ancient people that had advanced technology had other ways of transportation that have been lost to us, or whatever else. You know, I'm not saying 100% I think they did. I'm just saying we have no idea. But what is true is that many of these ancient sites, and most of them across the United States, all interconnect with each other. That's what I discovered. All those sites across the Four Corners region that I traveled to, even though that some of them are hundreds of thousands of miles away, and in fact, some of them even connect, like there's stuff like, well, there's a road. There's an ancient road, like a highway, like a giant ancient highway that extends all the way down, all the way from Chaco Canyon in New Mexico, all the way down to South America, to ancient sites around where like the Nazca lines and stuff are at. How come nobody ever talks about that? How come nobody ever talks about at Chaco Canyon? They found artifacts pertaining to virtually every world religion that existed up until that time period when those artifacts were created. People were coming from, I believe it was some sort of alien enclave or something there at Chaco Canyon in New Mexico and other sites too. But the thing that got me about going there is how small the doors on these structures are. Like almost like they're made for dwarfs. It's very strange. Very strange. Not even doors, no doors, not one single door for an adult-sized person to walk through. Which, I mean, I guess you could interpret that any number of ways. I don't suppose you have to go directly to the alien thing, but when you see the depictions that were found around that area, that clearly, and especially when you go up like I did, when you go up to Sego Canyon in Utah and all that stuff, and you notice all these sites interconnect, and you can draw straight lines to them that intersect. You know, that sort of think that's what's going on. Especially when I went to Sego Canyon, I mean, I had seen those glyphs and stuff before, but when you go there and it's in the middle of fucking nowhere in Utah, god damn, middle of nowhere, worth it though. But when you go there and see it, it becomes clear to you way more than it becomes clear to you from looking at any pictures or video or anything. But when you go there, it becomes clear there was an event here, and there was some sort of multi-dimensional thing where you had, it wasn't just like an alien force that invaded or, passers by, which I think is definitely another plausible explanation for why there's been so many different types. I think, well, there's some people, even some ancient tribes and stuff have talked about how there's these portals within the earth, and some people believe this is why so many UFOs have been seen underwater and been seen in the oceans coming in and out of waterways for many, many years. I mean, even going back to Columbus, saw stuff like this. But supposedly the idea is that there's, and this is why Earth has never been destroyed and why there's extraterrestrial races that are supposedly looking over Earth. Some people believe that's why the Black Knight satellite is there, is that there are portals within the Earth that allow you to jump, travel great distances across the galaxy. It's almost like a jump point. And this is that was put there, who knows how many millions of years ago. And that's why Earth is so far on like sort of the back north 40 of the universe. Some people also believe that's why we haven't ever been, why we haven't been wiped out by other extraterrestrials so far, and why we don't, nobody's come down like fucking in the TV show V and landed on the fucking roof of the United Nations building, and they look like us and they talk like us, and really, you peel the skin off and the reptilian aliens underneath. Some people believe that's why that's never happened. And, they're also afraid that humans might do something to that if they found out. But nonetheless, I can't remember what I was getting at there with that, with why I brought up the underwater portals and all that. But going back to what I was saying about Sego Canyon. What you have there is, it was some kind of multidimensional event where you had all these different types, as if it just being like one race from one location. What they document at Sego Canyon is some sort of event where there was a whole bunch of different races on the planet all at once in that area, and it was documented by people thousands of years ago. Some of the carvings there, are the writing and some of the paintings of those creatures, 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 years. Some of the ones that are kind of faded that you can't see as well, but you can still kind of see, that kind of have look like a man standing in front of a depiction of a solar system. They won't even put an age on those because they're so old. So we're talking pre-flood, we're talking 14,000 back on some of those there in Sego Canyon. So apparently this was something where you had a recurrence of this, where it was cyclical, where people were coming back and visiting on a cyclical basis. It's been pointed out that in Mesopotamian ziggurats, the structure were accessed by an external flight of stairs. On the other hand, the ziggurats in Iran were accessed by ramps. In Iran, the best-known ziggurat is Choga Zanbil, which is located on the River Dez in the southwestern Khuzestan province. This ziggurat was discovered in 1936 and was inscribed in the UNESCO World Heritage List in 1979. Chaco Canyon is also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's been dated to around 1250 BC, and until 2002, it was the only ziggurat known to have survived in Iran. 2 mounds have been excavated in Jaraft. See there how they refer to them as mounds. A town 230 kilometers to the south of Kerman, the capital of the Kerman province. These 2 mounds are separated by a couple of kilometers from each other and have been designated as sites A and B. The excavation of Site B revealed a 2-story citadel with a base covering an area of 13.5 hectaacres. Surrounding the structure were the remains of a wall 10.5 meters in thickness. These findings suggest that the structure had once been a fortified building. Yeah, that's also one of my theories on the rock wall, especially because there's been so many different things found at all the different digs. That's why it's been my desire to do a dig and try to find a place to do a dig that's there where there hasn't been one done already, because at every locations they've done these different digs at. You can see the pictures. Different stuff is found at different locations. I mean, it's definitely the wall, and the wall is there, but it looks different, and sometimes the stones are different depending on what location where it's dug at. That's why I think, just like they're talking about here, because it's an enclosed wall and not just something like even though we know it was for sure used as a seawall when the Gulf of Mexico would have come up right to where Rockwall is now back in those days, pre-flood. And we know this because even when you dig down there now, even when John Lindsay did his dig in 1999, they thought they were hitting groundwater when they started getting deeper. And instead what they were finding was seawater, salt water. And because it had been, the Rockwall was covered in that catastrophic event somewhere around 12,800 years ago in the Gulf of Mexico. We know what that was. But because it was covered, and it was covered in all this mud and silt and covered up, once you start getting down there, it's been sitting down there undisturbed for how many thousands of years? 13,000 years. They literally John Lindsay found sand dollars with fresh meat in them. You cracked open sand dollars, they had fresh meat in them, preserved saltwater, shark's teeth, large shark's teeth embedded into the rocks of the wall. So we know, but it would have just been a straight line wall had it just been a seawall. It was built to, and not only that, built to produce energy as well. And that's why I believe that within in the center of what would have been the rock wall, which is really where the main part of the town is now, I believe it was encompassing a much larger structure, maybe even something like a pyramid or a ziggurat there. That's in the neighborhood, was built somewhere in the neighborhood of roughly 432,000 years ago, which again lines up with the information documented in the Sumerian Kings list of when these pre-flood cities were built all around the world, and what some people refer to as the Atlantean civilization. So interesting, they're finding this also in these ancient sites in Iran. And Site A, on the other hand, a ziggurat-like structure which consists of 2 levels, was unearthed. This structure has been measured to be 17 meters in height, 300 meters in both length and width at the base, and 150 meters on each side of the second level. This huge structure covered almost the whole of the mound, and this monument structurally resembles the ziggurats of Mesopotamia. It has been suggested that buried beneath the sand may be the oldest and largest ziggurat in the world. It has been suggested that the ziggurat unearthed in Giraffe dates to around 2200 BC. By comparison, the oldest ziggurat in Mesopotamia, the ziggurat of Ur, is regarded as having been built around 2100 BC by Ur-Nammu. Some have also hypothesized that the ziggurat of Giraffe was built by the Arata, a legendary Bronze Age kingdom whose existence has been attested to in Sumerian texts. The precise location of the civilization, however, is unclear. For instance, while some scholars believe that Arata was situated in what is today Giraffe, others have suggested that this legendary kingdom was located in Azerbaijan, Baluchistan, or on the Gulf. Apart from the location of Arata, the age of the ziggurat has also been questioned. So far, the dating of the monument has been based on 2 small fragments that may be written inscriptions. Undisturbed material for radiocarbon dating, however, is yet to be found. It appears that the Great Mountain Giraffe has many more secrets to reveal. And, of course, it does. And, of course, this is, again, another one of the many reasons why we continue to hear saber rattling and why they want to have a full-on invasion over there. What is it that they're looking for? You know, what do they have to gain from just controlling these ancient sites? Well, as we just already discussed at the top of it, one being controlling the narrative, controlling the historical narrative. But also, number 2, is the main thing is that they are looking for some ancient technology there that falls in line, other pieces of other things that they've already found, whether that's an ancient Stargate they're looking for or not, who knows? Probably that, that's a good candidate for what it is, but many things, really. poll, majority of Americans want First Amendment written. I don't trust polls, good or bad, either way. 51% of millennials want fines or jail time for hate speech. I mean, and a lot of these millennials are going socialist too. I mean, what do you expect? Listen, that'll be the first. To me, if anything should spark off a civil war in this country, it shouldn't be divide and conquer, left and right bullshit between Democrats and Republicans. It should be people who want to make words a crime. I mean, that is thought crime. Words are words and actions are actions. And I believe, the majority of free-thinking individuals on planet Earth, that you can talk all day. What's he say? What's he say in fucking Reservoir Dogs? You gonna bark all day, little doggy? You're gonna bite? I don't think you should be punished. I mean, yeah, does it suck? Yeah, it does. But guess what? That's part of the things, and this is what we've understood for centuries, is that you don't have to agree with anything anybody says, but you should always agree with someone's right to say it. And if you don't, then you are the thought police. I think somebody listen, and I don't like it either. But that's the way it is, and that's the way it should always stay. You can say whatever you want all day. If you want to be a racist, bigoted piece of shit and call everybody every name under the fucking sun all day and all long, as long as you're not acting in those ways to physically do physical harm to anyone, then you should just be treated like everybody else has been treated since time immemorial, like a dumbass prick and, ignored. But this whole thing now where we want to put people in jail for words, fuck no. If we even get close to having that, I'm here to tell you right now, ladies and gentlemen, you have never once, because I've said this from the very beginning, I never, ever, ever once have ever called for violence, ever called for civil war. I've been exposing those type of people. But I'm here to tell you right now, that's probably the one thing that would get me to go, all right, lock and load, let's go. If they start wanting to put people in jail for words, especially like people with like what I do, or stand-up comedians or, writers for comedy shows. I mean, if people still want to start putting people in jail for words, it's time to lock and load. I mean, that's just where I stand. Actions are what people. If you do something, if you hurt somebody out of hate because of the color of their skin or sexual orientation or something like that, and you fucking physically bring harm to somebody, okay, that person needs to be fucking dealt with. You go and you hurt somebody because of the color of their skin or whether they're male or female or whatever fucking pronoun. All right. But, calling somebody a fag or a kike or a spick or a nigger or fucking whatever else, it's just words. And what have we always done with people who are bigoted? We just treat them like the dickheads they are, right? They get shut. Nobody wants to be around somebody who's going to be fucking talking hateful anyway, right? You don't want to be around somebody who's talking hateful, so you just relegate them to the fucking until they change their ways. If they want to come back and be around people, they'll fucking change the word, and we'll start using language like that anymore. But to start outlawing words, to start going after speech, is the most contrary thing to freedom that I can think of. It's words. It's fucking sounds. What's Ricky say? Sounds from your mouth speakles. I can't remember. Ricky from Trailer Park Boys had something funny about that one time, but yeah, I mean, I think that the idea of somebody being put away because they called somebody a woman. I did that one time. It was probably about 10 years or so ago. I didn't realize this person, it wasn't a friend of mine. It was just somebody I knew, kind of an acquaintance or something. I didn't realize this person was transitioning. So I still referred to them as she, even though this person was turned into a male or something. And somebody asked where so-and-so was. And I said, oh, she's here, and oh my God, he's here. You're supposed to say he's here. I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm sorry that I knew this person back when they were still a she. Somehow that makes me a bad person, ridiculous. But, that's what they want to do. You call somebody by the wrong pronoun and they want to put you in jail. It's ridiculous. Caitlyn Jenner. If you refer to Caitlyn Jenner as Bruce Jenner now, they want to fucking ruin you. Again, the idea of there being any sort of, listen, if you're on a job somewhere, if you're on a job and you're working for a company and you fucking, you overheard going, God damn, that fucking kike ass fucking boss of ours don't fucking pay us right, cheating me out of money, fucking Jew motherfucker. If you're on a job and you're referring to the boss as a fucking kike or something because he fucking Jewed you out of some money, all right, all right, you're fired. You're the fuck out of here. We don't have time for this. Okay, shit like that, I get it. But when you want to start going after people, listen, that's one of the side effects of freedom. Is that, there are people who have the right to say things that you don't agree with, and it's your right to disagree with them as much as it's their right to say them. I don't understand what's changed. I don't understand why we don't just do like we've always done, which is it's always worked. It's always worked. Anybody that's hateful or a hate monger or anything else, and thank you. I was trying to think of the term natural selection the other night. Someone reminded me that's what it was. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Was exactly the term I was looking for. Natural selection. Same thing here. Natural selection, man. Those people get weeded out. Majority of the time, you don't have to deal with them anyway. But just this idea of words and people being put in jail, it's completely ridiculous. A majority of Americans, and a majority of the people that were polled, these polls mean exactly dick 99% of the time. A majority of Americans believe the First Amendment should be rewritten and are willing to crack down on free speech as well as the press, according to a new poll. More than 60% of Americans agree on restricting speech in some way, while a slim majority, 51%, want to see the First Amendment rewritten to reflect the cultural norms of today. The Campaign for Free Speech, which conducted the survey, that's what's funny to me, is that even in the times, it's just amazing that when the Constitution was written, hate speech was more, way, way worse than it is now. But you guys want to rewrite that, even though the language that's used now towards people of color and everything else is way less prevalent. Anyway, what else we got? Argonne team looks to insect brains as models for computer chip innovation. It's the latest buzz, or burp, burp, your dumbass puns, in artificial intelligence. Scientists at the energy departments, see what I told you? See what I've told you? Just like I was talking about with Snowden when he was on Rogan. Well, I looked in the NSA and CIA databases. I went in there and searched chemtrails and aliens, and I didn't find anything in there, so there's nothing in there. Right, because we're all fucking dumbasses. because we're all stupid and none of us have ever done our own research or our own homework on any of these subjects right. Because all of us all believe that the NSA and the CIA are the only companies, or not companies rather, but the only organizations within the structure of the government that are doing secret projects. I'm telling you, the Department of Energy is the most overlooked one. They're the ones working on back engineering extraterrestrial propulsion systems. They're the ones working on the chemtrail program. And here we go. I wasn't expecting this and just saw this article that would be interesting to talk about. Because now they're looking at insect brains on how to basically create small artificial intelligence chips. And where are they doing it at? The Department of Energy, of course. Let's continue. Scientists at the Energy Department's Argonne National Laboratory, not to be confused with Argonne or Orgone. This is ARGO. Argonne. ARGONNE. National Laboratory have pioneered a cutting-edge neuromorphic computer chip modeled off the brains of bees, fruit flies, and other insects that can rapidly learn, adapt, and use substantially less power than its conventional computer chip counterparts. The physicists leading an interdisciplinary team that developed the state-of-the-art design recently spoke to NextGov about the chip's potential to advance artificial intelligence. If we start from a biological standpoint, we use ourselves, humans, as a model for intelligent systems, of course, but there are many other branches that evolution has taken where you can sort of reach big computational power. Insects are one of these areas. Limitations in contemporary computing motivated the team to look for alternative scientific approaches to apply to microelectronics and the materials that make them up. Over the past 70 years, humans have gotten much better at making physical computing components, and it's at a point where it's becoming difficult to continuously improve physical devices. Personal devices are simultaneously getting smaller and smarter, and industry watchers anticipate an impending boom in smart sensors that will require less power to compute. And machine learning and deep neural networks are also evolving, but they note that they are generally narrowly trained and limited in flexibility. But where traditional AI and computing systems fall short, the complexities and viability of insects offer a good model system and a modern sense of promise. I tend to see an insect as an autonomous system that consumes milliwatts of power, and that in the case of the bee, they can go miles and come back. They essentially know their way in and their way back. They can solve problems, and they can learn tasks that they haven't been exposed to from an evolutionary standpoint. Evolution has been very ruthless to insects, and people have come to understand that smart insects starve sooner because they consume more energy. This essentially allows insects to compute things while consuming just a teeny tiny amount of power. Further, insects also integrate many different sensing inputs, have receptors for different types of chemicals, and can process wind and orient themselves based on sunlight, and some can sense the magnetic field. So, with few neurons, they are sensor heavy, they are power efficient, and they can operate in a very noisy environment, apparently very proficiently. So this is, what's interesting about this is different than just the stuff they've had for years ago, like Robo-Roach. This is something different than, don't get this twisted with other stuff you've heard about. This is not inserting computers and putting chips within insects' brains. This is talking about actually making organic computers out of living insects. I mean, that's, again, Department of Energy is working on this, ladies and gentlemen. Why is the Department of Energy working on something like that? I mean, does the Department of Energy, shouldn't they be dealing with stuff like oil and gas and nuclear power and all this stuff? Why are they fucking dicking around with trying to create computers out of insect brains? Because somebody like Snowden, or some hacker, of course. Because how many times have you ever heard anybody trying to hack the Department of Energy? Zero. Everybody's going to go for them CIA databases. Everybody's going to go for them NSA databases. And meanwhile, the Department of Energy's over here running shit and over here doing the most top secret stuff. Nobody's paying attention to them. Or the Treasury Department, you know. Treasury Department's the one that's running the clandestine CIA ops to overthrow countries and devalue currencies, and you know, it's going and anybody that you know, tries to make counterfeit bills, they send sharpshooters out and take them out, and you never hear about it on the news and shit like that. Oh man, that's how you know somebody like Snowden's a plant. If he wasn't a plant, he'd know where to look. Turns out Hillary Clinton said Republicans, not Russians, were grooming Tulsi Gabbard. Well, that's hilarious. Because is there really any difference? And how does that happen anyway? In a curious turn of events, a number of major news organizations ran corrections Wednesday night over week-old reports that sparked a testy war of words between Hillary Clinton and Democratic presidential candidate Tulsi Gabbard. A number of media organizations, including the New York Times, CNN, and Politico, ran reports saying Clinton told the podcast Campaign HQ with David Plouffe that Russians were, quote, grooming a female Democratic candidate, widely assumed to be Gabbard, for a third-party run to play a potential spoiler in the 2020 election. But apparently Clinton meant Republicans, not Russians, were doing the grooming. Right. Mm-hmm. Well, again, if you paid attention to my CMP research and my Secret Right films and stuff like that, listen, I mean, there's no difference. We know what she meant, and we know exactly why she even knew that information. Hillary is as much in with the Russians as Trump or anybody else. Again, I've said this a million times. It's exactly why nothing happened to that intentionally botched and staged Mueller report thing. They were going to expose themselves even at the cost of Donald Trump getting off. Because it's much bigger than that. Now, this is the same reason why, remember back when Bill was in office? And up till that point, a lot of people don't remember this, you know? A lot of people weren't paying attention to this stuff back then, but I was. And up till that point, nobody really knew, believe it or not, and I'm not trying to give Hillary any undue credit here, because the only reason she knows any of this stuff, again, like I said, is because she's in those circles and has been for decades. But Hillary was the one. Remember when the same kind of thing was happening around the same time when Clinton was in office, and they were talking about impeachment, just like they're talking about it now with Trump. And she was the first one that made people start digging into some of these secretive right-wing groups like the CMP and others when she came out and made her statements about the quote-unquote vast right-wing conspiracy. And that's when you started seeing news articles being run, when they started coming out, and we ended up finding out and having the admission that Bob Barr and a bunch of other CMP members at the NRA's national meeting that year all came up and concocted that plan to impeach Clinton. But again, you have to understand that it wasn't just a right-wing, left-wing thing. It was a stage thing from the beginning. The Clintons were friends with the Bushes even going back to the 80s. This was all just a plan that had been installed decades before so they could run the usual game they ran on us. You know, Republican, Democrat, Bush, Clinton. That was what it was. They had to be able to do that. They had to have that quote-unquote vast right-wing conspiracy and the whole impeachment thing so that they could be able to get a Republican in next time and have Bush installed in there. It was all part of the plan. But she only knew about the quote-unquote vast right-wing conspiracy because she was probably in there. I'm not saying she was, but she was probably on some level in there with those guys planning all that. Same thing here. All of this stuff is staged, and these guys can say lock her up all they want, and they can say all they want. They can say how much Hillary is a criminal all they want, and news all day. And the fact of the matter is, it's just like WWE. They're slapping ass and high-fiving each other backstage, and they're all just laughing at us or what dumbasses we are that we believe it and buy into the divide and conquer shit. It's a gangbang, and it's them on us. Right? Jesus, literally, how many times have I covered this? How many times have I covered this in the fucking 12 years? Again with the railgun shit. Again. Probably before the end of the year, they'll probably roll out stories again saying they found water on Mars. How many times? Literally, 50 fucking times. 50 separate fucking times they have come out and said, we found water on Mars, and announced it like it was breaking news. The U.S. Navy wants deadly railguns on the ships. Good luck with that. They've had railguns for over a decade. Okay? They've admitted to having them for over a decade. I've talked about this before. It was the second Transformers movie. What year did that second Transformers movie came out? It was over 10 years ago, wasn't it? Let me look it up. Give me a second here. I'm going to do this live on here. I want to know. What year did that? 2009, so 10 years ago. Revenge of the Fallen. So it's been, I was right on. I'd say they've had them for more than 10 years. Yeah. In that movie, which they admit they got script approval for from the Pentagon. If you don't know what script approval means, it means that the Department of Defense, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the Pentagon, whoever, gets final veto power on the content of your film, and in exchange for that, they give you access to actual military weaponry that you get to film and use in your movie that nobody else gets to. And in that movie, they had the ship-mounted railgun that they used to shoot at the Decepticon. That's when they destroyed the Great Pyramids and stuff like that. And that was a real weapon. They even admitted to it at the time that was a real weapon. And now I've seen, I don't know how many of these over the past few years. They run this every couple of years or every couple times a year, where they come out with these stories and say, oh, we want the rail gun. We're developing the rail gun. China's developing the rail gun. Ooh, they're evil. And again, it's a technology they've had for over 10 years. They probably, knowing what we know about how long they keep this kind of stuff under wraps before admitting to having it, they probably had it for 20 years. There's renewed interest of late in the U.S. Navy's USN electromagnetic railgun. Plans to perform at-sea weapon testing appear to have been delayed in favor of further research. So while development will probably continue, there are still two major problems holding the railgun back. The first is meeting the weapon's massive power requirements at sea. The second is demonstrating that it'll be better than existing weapons. The railgun launches rounds using electromagnetic force rather than explosive propellant. The USN prototype has 100 MJ of pulse power, that's megajoules, of pulse power capacitors and 25 megawatt power plant for recharging. The capacitors release their stored charge into the railgun barrel in 100th of a second, accelerating the projectile to about Mach 6. The USN's goal is to fire 10 rounds per minute, so the capacitors need to be recharged to fire every 6 seconds. Yeah, I think, wasn't that one of the things in okay, I think I'm starting to understand this now. Okay. So I think I see what the confusion has been here. Because if I recall in that Transformers movie, I think they could only fire one shot. at a time. I don't think they fired one. I think it was just, but supposedly that's all you're supposed to need. It's supposed to be such a powerful weapon that you're not supposed to need to fire a bunch of projectiles right on top of each other. So I get what they're saying here now. So even though they've had these weapons for a long time, yeah, see, that kind of goes, I don't know, that goes against what I always thought they were looking for this technology anyway. Now they're talking about like they're trying to replace existing cannons and stuff like that shoot projectiles, when I always thought it was just supposed to be something to augment the existing weapons, to get you, to go a farther distance than a missile or a cannon can go, and to provide you with more impact power, etc. So I guess that wasn't good enough. I swear, I could be wrong about this. I'm not going to, I can't stomach to go back and watch it again, so you're just going to have to either watch it yourself or take me my word. But I believe that when they could only, even when, because what was his name? What's his name? What's the actor's name? Turturro. And he calls in the fucking railgun strike. And I think they could only fire like one at a time, or maybe even only one. I could be wrong, but I swear there's a line there where he says something like, you better make sure you hit it on target or whatever. And I think they only fire, he's like on top of the pyramid. I think they only fire one projectile or one shot. That's probably what's going on. They can only fire, they're limited to how many they can fire. So now they're looking at being able to, Jesus Christ. They're looking at being able to fire a bunch of these railgun shots right on top of each other. And to have those exist, or replace all existing weapons. I don't know about that. I agree. We're probably far off from that. All right, what else we got? Powerful earthquakes reveal mysterious 15 million year old fossil in California. That's weird. I hadn't heard about this. Following July's powerful California earthquakes, a utility crew on a private road made a remarkable find, a 600-pound stone block encasing a fossil of a large torso that scientists believe probably dates back 15 million years. A large torso of what? The scientists think the July 4th earthquake magnitude 6.4 and the July 5th earthquake magnitude 7.1 in Kern County dislodged the 4-foot-long block from the Tapo Canyon area, causing it to roll down into the Simi Valley. Jesus. Russell Shapiro, professor of paleontology at CSU Chico, believes the fossil could be a small whale, the kind that swam in the Pacific Ocean when it covered the Simi Valley area of coastal California millions of years ago, but he's not certain because the creature's head has not been found. I really want to go back and look for it. Thus, he said the fossil could be a sea hippo, a species that lived in the Pacific when the Simi Valley was underneath it. We're confident this rock is of the Miocene age, which ranges from 23 million years ago to 5.3 million years ago. Yeah, the picture of this is interesting. Doesn't look like a lot of other things they found before. Doesn't look like every dinosaur fossil we've ever seen. Interesting. Interesting stuff. Oh, I covered that one yesterday. Don't know how that got in the stack again. Oh, fucking Pat Buchanan. Boy, he's just showing his CMP Russia-loving cards. Calling Putin the new king of the Middle East. Russia assumes mantle of supreme power broker in the Middle East, proclaimed Britain's Telegraph, the article began. This is written by Pat Buchanan, by the way. Russia's status as the undisputed power broker of the Middle East was cemented as Vladimir Putin continued a triumphant tour of capitals traditionally allied to the U.S. Remember what I mentioned yesterday, though, about it kind of seems like there's some, smiling and nodding going on to Russia. And meanwhile, there's some seems like there's some deception going on there too. I saw another story that got it here somewhere in the stack last night that kind of went along with that. Supposedly they're saying that the United States got caught smuggling Syrian oil out. Because again, that's the only reason why Russia wants it. They want to control all this oil. I've talked about that before. They want to control all these energy in these countries. But apparently what they're saying is, hopefully I'll find it in my stack here and we'll get to it before the end of the show. But apparently they're saying, that America's going, here, you're Russia, you guys can take over. But, by the way, but you're not getting oil. Oh, did we not mention that? Oh, our bad. No. We're pulling our troops out. Yeah, for sure. But just because we're pulling our troops out doesn't mean you guys thought you were getting no. No. That's not how this works, Putin. Sorry. No. Continuing on here with the Patrick Buchanan article. Russia's status as the undisputed power broker in the Middle East was cemented as Vladimir Putin continued a triumphant tour of capitals traditionally allied to the U.S. Donald Trump has handed Putin the Middle East on a plate, was the title of a Telegraph column. Putin seizes on Trump's Syria retreat to cement Middle East role, says the Financial Times. The U.S. press parroted the British. Putin is now the new master of the Mideast, and woe is on us. Before concluding that Trump's pullout of the last 1,000 U.S. troops in Syria is America's Dunkirk, some reflection is needed. Yes, Putin has played his hand skillfully, diplomatically, as the Brits say. The Russian president is punching above his weight. He gets on with everyone. He is welcomed in Iran by the Ayatollah, meets regularly with Bibi Netanyahu, is a cherished ally of Syria's Bashar Assad, and this week was being hosted by the King of Saudi Arabia and the royal rulers of the UAE. October 2019 has been a triumphant month. Yet consider what Putin has inherited and what his capabilities are for playing power broker of the Middle East. He has a single naval base on the Med, Tartus in Syria, which dates to the 1970s, and a new air base, Khameneim, also in Syria. The U.S. has 7 NATO allies on the Med: Spain, France, Italy, Croatia, Albania, Greece, and Turkey, and 2 on the Black Sea, Romania and Bulgaria. We have U.S. forces and bases in Afghanistan, Iraq, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Oman, and Djibouti. Russia has no such panoply of bases in the Middle East or the Persian Gulf. We have the world's largest economy. Russia's economy is smaller than Italy's and not a tenth of the size of ours. And now that we're out of Syria's civil war and the Kurds have cut their deal with Damascus, consider what we have just dumped into Vladimir Putin's lap. He is now the man in the middle between Turkey and Syria. He must bring together dictators who detest each other. There is the first President Erdogan, who is demanding a 20-mile deep strip of Syrian borderland to keep the Syrian Kurds from uniting with the Turkish Kurds of the PKK. Erdogan wants the corridor to extend 280 miles from Manbij, east of the Euphrates, all across Syria to Iraq. Then there is Bashar Assad, victorious in his horrific 8-year civil war, who was unlikely to cede 5,000 square miles of Syrian territory to a permanent occupation by Turkish troops. Reconciling these seemingly irreconcilable Syrian and Turkish demands is now Putin's problem. If he can work this out, though, he ought to get the Nobel Prize. And this goes on and on. I'm not going to read all of it, but the point is that, Putin was all getting all fucking excited and all wetting himself and thinking he's Mr. Man because, look what, I got the Americans to pull out. No, we're going to tell everybody it's because of this. Really, we just want the oil, which everybody already knows. And then, like I said, I'm trying to find this article, but like I said, yeah, United States said, did we not mention? Oh, no, we ain't doing that. Nah, we ain't doing that. You thought we were doing that, huh? Really? You really thought America's that much chumps? You really thought we were going to pull our fucking troops out of there and just let y'all have it lock, stock, and barrel? No, we ain't doing that. Oh, come on. Really? Really, dog? Really? You thought that's what was going down, huh? Oh, my bad, dog. I thought, nah, y'all ain't getting the oil. Nah. Y'all can have the fucking sand, and y'all can have the fucking curds. We taking the oil, bitch. Fuck out. Huge asteroid in the solar system could be upgraded to a dwarf planet. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Dun, 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 dun. What do we got here? It's the return. The return of Nibiru. You thought it was over. You thought 2012 was the end. Now, coming this winter to a theater near you, it's Nibiru, The Return, starring Tom Hanks. Uh-oh. Kind of shit we got going on here. Our solar system could be about to acquire a new planet, a dwarf planet to be precise, after astronomers examined a hulking space rock in the asteroid belt. Here we go. Here we go. Hygeia is pretty big for an asteroid at 280 miles across. It's far bigger than the asteroid which wiped out the dinosaurs, but it would become the smallest dwarf planet in the solar system. It would take the crown from Ceres, 550 miles across, which is found in the same asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. The findings came after an international team examined it using the European Southern Observatory's Very Large Telescope. A dwarf planet, according to the International Astronomical Union, is a celestial object orbiting a star that is massive enough to be rounded by its own gravity, but does not have the gravitational dominance to clear the area around its orbit by consuming or slinging away smaller objects in its path. The most famous example is Pluto, which was downgraded to a dwarf planet in 2006 after the IAU changed the requirements that defined the planet. But then they changed it back, right? It's been changed back and forth 15 times. Along with Ceres and Pluto, there are 3 other known dwarf planets in the solar system: Haumea, Makemake, and Eris. Ceres and Hygeia hail from the asteroid belt, sharing the vast space with 7,000 other members, including a large asteroid called Vesta. Blah, blah, blah. This goes into how many things are believed. But, no, that's interesting. I don't need a refresher course on fucking when the universe formed, all that. I hate when they do that in these articles. Just give us the fucking fact. We know how you believe the universe was formed, all right? You don't have to constantly regurgitate your Big Bang shit down our throat in every fucking article. Come on. Here it is. Russia releases damning evidence of the U.S. smuggling Syrian oil. I love this, actually. I actually think this is gangsta. This is gangsta as fuck, actually. I dig this. I'm in on this. I think this is gangsta. I was wondering about that at first. Like, well, fuck are we just... I just thought it was, like everybody else. Trump giving in to Putin, giving in to Russia as per usual. But, man, that is a gangsta move to just be like, oh, no, bitch, you ain't getting the oil. You can have the sand. You can have the curds. You can have that war. We taking the oil, bitch. America, hoorah. This is fucking hilarious to me. Of course, the source on this is Rio Novostri, which is fucking as disinfo as it gets. So maybe there's other two, but just the idea of it to me is gangsta as fuck. Just the idea that Putin's in there fucking thinking he's a big swinging dick and got us to pull our troops out, and he's rubbing his hands together. Yeah, fuck yeah, we getting that oil, motherfucker. Oh, we didn't bring that up. Oh, sorry, that slipped my mind. Nah, y'all ain't getting the oil, bitch. We got that. According to the ministry, photos confirm that Syrian oil, both before and after the routing defeat of the Islamic State terrorists in the land beyond the Euphrates River under the reliable protection by U.S. military servicemen, oil was actively being extracted, and then fuel trucks were massively being sent for processing outside Syria. This probably is true. Here in the picture of the Daman oil gathering station, 42 kilometers east of the Deir ez-Zor province, taken on August 23rd, large amounts of trucks were spotted. There were 90 automotive vehicles. That's fucking hilarious. So the timing of Trump pulling the troops out and turning this over to Russia coincides with them getting, they sucked it all dry and then turned it over. God damn. You know, again, I hate all these I'm an equal opportunity hater. I hate all these clowns on the left or the right and all sides. I hate fucking brainwashed fucking Christian conservative zealots and pinko commie lefty liberals equally. But goddamn, when I see some gangster shit like this, it's that is gangster as fuck. Man, that is fucking gangster, dude. Oh, man. They had the trucks in there sucking that sumbitch dry. Get out, go, get the fuck out, get out. Oh, look, hey, we're pulling troops out. Yay! America! Meanwhile, fucking Putin's like, I can't wait to get in there. Oh, he gets in there. All right, how much we got? What the fuck? This shit's been sucked dry. Oh, man. But at the same time, I guess I shouldn't be laughing at it, really. It's funny to me, though, because it's just so gangsta. I probably shouldn't be laughing at it, though. That's the type of shit's going to spark World War III. To be honest with you. That's the kind of shit Trump's going to do. Where Putin's just going, you know what? Fuck these motherfuckers. Fuck with me, bitch. Push the fucking button. That's the kind of shit, honestly, to me, that from the very beginning that I've said, from the very beginning, even before Trump got elected, that's what you got to worry about with him. It's not the overt stuff that everybody focuses on. I think you have to worry about him. It's that shady, off the books, behind the scenes gangsta shit you got to worry about him pulling. Because that's the shit that's going to make Putin pull the fucking trigger. Here's another one. So this is okay. Well, it's fucking Bloomberg, but, I don't know. Bloomberg to me is a little bit more, it's still all fucking bullshit media. But I'm just saying, Bloomberg, Rio Novosti, but yet again, there seems to be a lot of evidence of this. Putin faces Syrian money crunch after U.S. keeps control of oil. Russian President Vladimir Putin is facing an unwelcome new financial challenge in Syria after the U.S. pullback enabled his ally Bashar al-Assad to reclaim the biggest chunk of territory in the country still outside his control. The U.S. decision to keep forces in northeastern Syria to guard oil fields denies Assad access to desperately needed funds to rebuild the Middle East state after 8 years of civil war. That's adding to the urgency of the United Nations-led talks between the Syrian government and the opposition groups in Geneva starting on Wednesday, which Putin has said could be decisive in settling the conflict. While agreement is far from certain, the negotiations on constitutional changes could help unlock money from U.S. allies in the Gulf and Europe, which have withheld aid because of Assad's close ties to Iran and his refusal to loosen his grip on power by making space for opposition groups. Russia's military intervention in Syria since 2015 succeeded in shoring up Assad at a time when he's at risk of being overthrown in rebellion backed by the U.S. and its allies. The UN estimates reconstruction costs in Syria at $250 billion, and the Syrian leadership can't count on either of its two main backers, Iran and Russia, for significant financing. Oh, okay. Now we're getting the rest of the story. So they were planning on using that oil. They're like, well, fuck, we'll just go in there and we'll sell that shit off and we'll use that instead of having to pay out of their own pocket for what they caused. Damn. That's interesting. Because if I didn't know better, I'd almost say for a second, I can't even believe I'm about to say this. Can't even believe the words are about to come out of my mouth. It almost seems like the United States might have done something right for once. I can't even believe it. I can't even believe the words came out of my mouth. Unbelievable. Exactly. But I agree with that premise, though. Shit, why, they caused all that shit. They caused all that damage. Now they want to come in and take over, I like that, though. I like the fact that we were like, nah. Nah, we ain't doing that. one more quick one here before I go. I want to give a shout out and a rest in peace to comedian and actor John Witherspoon. Pops, rest in peace, Pops. What a fucking great guy, great actor, phenomenal comedian. I saw him live a couple of times, and he was coming back to Dallas in a couple of months, and I was going to go, and he passed away. Hey, if you remember John Witherspoon, son, I got bit in the ass today by a filthy, stinking dog. All day long, bang his ass. All day long, my fist of a dog's ass. That's my pleasure. Gotta put some water on that damn shit. Love John Witherspoon. Spoonie, he was great. He was a great guy. I met him one time at one of his. This has been before the cell phone camera days and shit, but. Yeah, I met him once, and he was so cool to me. He was so cool to me. What you know? Come on here and say hi to me, white boy. Because I just kind of waited him as I was kind of walking by. I was like, "Hey, John, how you doing, man?" And he was like, "Get over here and shake my hand, white boy. Go ahead and talk to me for a minute." I was like, "Okay." It was just so cool, you know. I wasn't expecting that. He was just kind of standing there by himself, you know, after a show, and. Hey, go ahead and talk to me for a minute, white boy. Yes, sir. Yes, Mr. Witherspoon. Hey, no, call me Spoon. Call me Spoon. Don't call me Witherspoon. Fucking great guy. Great actor. Rest in peace. Really crushed me when I heard that he died and that I was never going to get to see him again for a third time. Loved John Witherspoon. Loved him so much. And so, yeah, rest in peace and much love to him and his family. Again, fundraising week, folks. Got to reach 100% of our goal. Got to have everybody chipping in. If you've never chipped in before, now is the time. If you haven't chipped in a while, now is the time. And any amount helps. All amount helps. You want to get a question in for me to answer on the show, $100 or more will do that. And what we really need is one person to come in and knock out a big chunk of our total goal so we can have all the other people that put in smaller amounts pull up the rest. So I'll be back here with you tomorrow, folks. I love you. Take care of yourselves. We'll see you next time. Folks, this is Josh Reeves, and I'm here to tell you about a fantastic website, FixYourGut.com. FixYourGut.com can help you take control of your overall health. Are you sick and tired of suffering from indigestion, acid reflux, bloating, or abdominal pain? Do you run to the bathroom either all the time or hardly ever at all? Do you forget things often or have trouble concentrating? Are you depressed or anxious? Do you have IBD or SIBO? Digestive disorders are increasing in frequency because of our toxic-laden, fast-paced world. There are billions of microorganisms that live in your intestinal tract that have more to say about your health than almost anything else. Learn how to make sure your gut has more of the right organisms to improve your health and enhance your life. FixYourGut.com has over 200 free blog articles, and it's one of the most valuable resources on the planet to improve your overall health and well-being. Search either Fix Your Gut or We've Read the Documents on YouTube for the latest health and conspiracy information as well. You can also purchase John Brisson's book, Fix Your Gut, or get personal one-on-one health coaching to help get you back to living your life happy and healthy. Visit FixYourGut.com, the ultimate source for all things digestive health.